The warning and the mistake, the data. Crystal pulsed with a faint red glow as it sat in the analysis chamber. Commander Vexter of the Kryn Imperial Fleet watched as the translation algorithms worked through the ancient message. His scales rippled with impatience. 3 weeks of excavation on a dead world, and this was all they had found, one single message from a civilization that had turned to dust. Millions of years ago, the lead scientist, a nervous female named Shira, approached with the translation pad. Her head was lowered in submission, gesture that pleased Vexter. He was a warrior of the old blood, descended from the conquerors who had unified the Kryn under one banner through fire and steel. Commander, Shira said quietly, the message is complete, but I must warn you, the content is disturbing. Vexter's secondary eyelids flickered with amusement. Disturbing? What could a dead species possibly say that would disturb me? Shira handed him the pad. The words appeared in standard Kryn script, translated from a language that had not been spoken in epochs. There were only 14 words, but they seemed to burn themselves into Vexter's vision. Do not attack the humans, they will deny you every final opportunity. This is not mercy. Vexter read the message 3 times. Each time his confusion grew deeper. Around him, the bridge of his flagship hummed with activity. Junior officers monitored their stations while the great engines pushed them through the darkness between stars. They were returning from a successful campaign against the Trilix Confederacy, another species that had learned what happened when you challenge the Kryn Empire. This makes no sense, Vexter said finally. Who are these humans and what does it mean about final opportunity? Shira pulled up a star map. On the holographic display, a small cluster of systems glowed blue in a remote sector of the galaxy. We have records of a species called humans. Commander, they occupy 17 worlds in the outer rim. They have been spacefaring for approximately 400 years. Their technology is adequate but not exceptional. Their military force is minimal. Vexter studied the map. Human systems were far from Kryn space, separated by thousands of light years. They posed no threat to the Empire. They were insignificant. Why would an advanced civilization leave a warning about such a primitive species? He wondered aloud. Perhaps they were not primitive when this message was written, suggested Shira. Perhaps they have declined over time. Vexter made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. Or perhaps this ancient species was simply fearful and superstitious. They are dead. The humans are alive but weak. This message is meaningless. You should have listened. But Vexter was a product of his culture. The Kryn believed in strength above all else. They measured worth by military power and territorial control. In their philosophy, there were only 2 types of species in the galaxy: the strong who ruled and the weak who served or died. 2 months later, the Kryn Empire encountered humanity for the first time. It began with a border dispute. A human mining colony had been established on an asteroid field that the CR claimed as part of their expanding territory. The colony was small, home to perhaps 50,000 humans who extracted rare minerals from the ancient rocks. They were miners, engineers, and their families. They had no warships, no planetary defenses, no weapons beyond personal sidearms for dealing with equipment malfunctions. Vexter was ordered to remove them. He approached the task with efficiency, his fleet of 6 heavy cruisers arrived at the asteroid field designated as Dust Haven. By the humans, the mining colony clung to the largest asteroid, a collection of pressurized domes and tunnels carved into the rock. Lights twinkled across the surface like stars trapped in stone. Vexthor opened a communication channel. His image appeared on every screen in the colony. He saw their faces looking back at him through the cameras. Humans were strange creatures, soft skin instead of scales, hair instead of crest, eyes that showed too much emotion. Humans of Dust Haven, he announced, you are occupying territory claimed by the Kryn Empire. You have 1 hour to evacuate. Take only what you can carry. Leave all structures and equipment intact. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction. A human appeared on his screen. It was a male, middle-aged by human standards, with gray touching the hair at his temples. He wore the simple coveralls of a mining supervisor. His name identifier read Marcus Webb, Colony Director, Commander Vexthor. Marcus said calmly, we have been here for 12 years. We have legal claims filed with the Galactic Commerce Authority. This territory was unclaimed when we arrived. We are willing to discuss shared resource extraction or territorial compensation, but we cannot simply abandon our homes. Vexthor felt nothing. This was how it always went. The weak tried to negotiate. They tried to find peaceful solutions. They spoke of laws and rights as if such things mattered when faced with superior force. You have 1 hour, Vexthor repeated. I suggest you begin evacuation immediately. He closed the channel. 58 minutes later, the colony was still fully populated. Vexthor could see through his sensors that only a handful of small vessels had launched. They were carrying children, the humans loading their young onto every available shuttle, but there was not enough time. There were not enough ships. Most of the 50,000 colonists remained in their domes, continuing their desperate evacuation efforts even as the deadline approached. Commander said, his weapons. Officer, we have target lock on all major structures, awaiting your command. Vexthor of the ancient message, do not attack the humans. He felt a moment of hesitation, a small voice in the back of his mind questioning what he was about to do. Then he remembered his training. He remembered the pride of the CR. He remembered that hesitation was weakness. Fire, he ordered. The plasma cannon spoke with the voice of stars. Brilliant blue-white beams crossed the distance between the cruisers and the asteroid. In seconds, the first dome exploded, its atmosphere venting into space in a cloud of frozen air and debris. Then the second dome, then the third. It took 6 minutes to destroy the entire colony. 50,000 humans died in those 6 minutes. Some perished instantly, vaporized by direct hits. Others died slowly, suffocating as their air escaped or freezing as their heating systems failed. The children on the evacuation ships watched through viewports as their parents and grandparents and friends disappeared in silent explosions of light. When it was over, Vexthor felt satisfied. The Kryn had sent a message. Human territorial claims meant nothing. Human lives meant nothing. Only strength mattered. Set course for Kryn Prime. He ordered, we will report mission success to the High Command. His ship turned away from the shattered asteroid. Behind them, the debris field slowly expanded, a cloud of metal and ice and frozen bodies tumbling through the void. The evacuation ships gathered together. their distress beacons crying into the darkness. Bexar did not look back. For 3 weeks there was silence. The human government said nothing. They sent no diplomatic protests. They issued no declarations of war. Their ships simply stopped coming to Krynn space. Human traders who had been visiting Krynn stations departed quietly and did not return. The entire human species seemed to hold its breath. The Krynn High Command was pleased. They had demonstrated their dominance. They had shown the galaxy what happened to those who challenged their territorial claims. Some younger officers even suggested attacking more human colonies to secure the entire sector. Then on the 22nd day, after Dust Haven, everything changed. Vexter was in his quarters reviewing tactical reports when the alarms began. He rushed to the bridge, his combat instincts bringing him fully alert in seconds. What he saw on the displays made his blood run cold. Ships were appearing throughout Krynn space, not just near his flagship but everywhere. His tactical officer was receiving reports from every corner of the Empire. Human vessels were materializing at every major Krynn world, every military station, every fleet assembly point. But these were not the ships in the Krynn intelligence databases. Those had been simple cargo vessels and small exploration craft. These new ships were something else entirely. They were massive, easily twice the size of the largest Krynn battleships. Their hulls were black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They moved with impossible grace, sliding through space, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions, and there were thousands of them. Battle stations, Bexar roared. All ships prepare for combat. Launch fighters, charge all weapons. The Krynn fleet responded with practice efficiency. Hundreds of warships that had been docked at orbital stations powered up their engines. Fighter craft poured from launch bays like angry insects. Defensive satellites activated their targeting systems. The human ships did nothing. They simply waited, surrounding each Krynn world in a silent net of black metal. Fire, Bexar commanded. The Krynn unleashed everything. They had plasma cannons, missile swarms, kinetic rail guns, particle beams, enough firepower to crack planets, poured toward the human fleet. Vexter watched the tactical display, waiting to see the enemy ships torn apart. Instead, he watched his weapons pass through the human vessels as if they were not there. The beams and projectiles simply vanished into the black holes without causing any visible damage. It was as though the human ships existed in multiple dimensions at once, only partially present in normal space. Weapons ineffective, his tactical officer reported, his voice rising with panic. All ordnance showing 0 impact. Sensors cannot achieve hard lock. Before Vexer could respond, the human ships acted. They did not fire visible weapons. There were no beams, no missiles, no explosions. Instead, something invisible reached out from each human vessel and touched the CRN ships. Vexter's flagship died. That was the only word for it. The engines stopped. The weapons went silent. Shields collapsed. Only life support and basic lighting remained functional. Around him, every screen showed the same thing happening to every Krynn vessel in the system. 6,000 warships reduced to helpless debris in less than 5 minutes. Damage report, Vexer demanded, though his voice had lost its certainty. No damage, Commander, his engineer replied, confusion clear in his tone. All systems are intact, they are just not responding. It is as if something is preventing them from functioning. Communication request appeared on the main screen. It came from one of the human ships. Vexthor hesitated, then accepted. A human face appeared before him. It was a female with dark skin and silver hair tied back in a simple style. She wore a uniform of deep blue with no visible rank insignia. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something that made Vexthor's scales prickle with instinctive fear. "Commander Vexthor," she said. Her voice was quiet and measured, like someone discussing routine business. "My name is Ambassador Chin. I represent the United Human Confederacy. We need to have a conversation about Dusthaven, the mercy worse than death." Vexthor stood motionless on the bridge of his dead ship, staring at the human ambassador on the screen around him. His officers waited in tense silence. Through the viewports, the black human vessels hung in space like pieces of the void itself, given form and purpose. "What do you want?" Beekser asked. His voice was steady, though something cold had settled in his chest. "If you have come for revenge, then take it. Kill us and be done with it." Ambassador Chen's expression did not change. "That is exactly what we will not do, Commander. That is the point of the message you found, the one you chose to ignore." "I do not understand." "You will," Shin said simply. "In time, you will understand completely. And that understanding will be far worse than any death we could give you." The screen shifted. Instead of Chen's face, Vexthor saw images. They were recordings from Dusthaven taken in those final moments before his plasma cannons had turned the colony to debris. He saw human families huddling together. In their final seconds, he saw children crying as they were loaded onto evacuation ships. He saw Marcus Webb, the colony director, standing at a viewport watching the Kryn fleet approach, knowing he would die because there was not enough time to save everyone. 50,000 people, Commander. Chen's voice continued over the images. 50,000 miners, engineers, teachers, artists, children. They were not soldiers. They were not a threat to your empire. They were simply people trying to build lives on a worthless rock that you decided you wanted. The images continued. Vexthor watched the domes explode. He watched bodies tumbling through vacuum. He watched everything he had done from a different perspective. When he had given the order to fire, it had been abstract numbers on a display. Enemy combatants cleared from disputed territory. Now he saw their faces. "We could kill you," Chin said. "We could destroy every Kryn world the way you destroy Dusthaven. We have that capability. Our technology is centuries ahead of anything you imagine possible. We could render your entire species extinct before your high command even understood what was happening." Vexthor's claws gripped the edge of his command console. "Then do it. Give us an honorable death. Give us war." "No," Shin replied, and her voice was as cold as the space between stars. "We will not give you what you want. We will not give you the glorious battle you crave. We will not give you the warrior's death your culture worships. We will give you something far different." The screen changed again. Now it showed Kryn Prime, the home world of Vexthor's species. Human ships surrounded it in concentric spheres, thousands of black vessels forming an impenetrable cage around the planet. Every military installation. "Your empire has been neutralized," Chin explained. "Every warship disabled, every Weapon system deactivated. Your ability to wage war has been removed, not destroyed, removed, and now the real work begins. What work? Vexter demanded. We are going to save you, Shin said. All of you, every single member of your species. We are going to keep you alive and healthy and safe, whether you want it or not, and you are going to live long enough to become something better than what you are. The transmission ended. Vexter stood in the darkness of his crippled ship, trying to comprehend what he had just heard. Around him, his officers exchanged confused glances. Save them? What kind of enemy spoke of salvation? Within hours, human transports began landing on Kryn Prime and every other Kryn world. They came not with soldiers but with doctors. They brought not weapons but medical equipment. They did not fire on the Kryn cities. Instead, they set up hospitals. The Kryn military tried to resist. Warriors charged human positions with blade and claw, preferring death in combat to whatever strange fate the humans had planned. But the humans did not fight back. They used weapons that rendered the Kryn unconscious without causing injury. Warriors who tried to kill themselves were revived and healed. Commanders who activated self-destruct systems found those systems had been disabled. Vexter was brought to Kryn Prime under human guard. They did not chain him or lock him in a cell. Instead, they gave him a comfortable apartment in the capital city with a view of the military academy where he had trained as a youth. A human doctor visited him every day to check his health. Human engineers ensured his apartment had power and water and climate control. He tried to starve himself. The humans fed him intravenously. He tried to stop breathing. The humans revived him. He tried to throw himself from the balcony. The humans had installed invisible force fields that prevented his fall. After his 7th suicide attempt, Ambassador Chin came to visit him personally. She sat across from him in his apartment, sipping tea that a human assistant had prepared. Vexter glared at her with all the hatred he could summon, but Chin seemed unaffected. Why? Vexter asked. His voice was horror from screaming. Why will you not let me die? Because death is easy, Shin replied. Death is what your culture uses to avoid facing the consequences of your actions. A warrior dies in battle and becomes a hero. His crimes are forgiven. His victims are forgot. The story ends and everyone moves on. She set down her teacup and looked directly into his eyes. We are not going to let your story end. Commander, we are going to make you live through every consequence of what you did. We are going to make you watch as your empire transforms. We are going to keep you alive and healthy for decades, for centuries if necessary, until you understand what you have taken from the galaxy. This is torture, Vexter whispered. No, Shin said gently. This is justice. This is what you denied the 50,000 people of Dust Haven. You denied them the chance to live, to grow, to become something more than they were. Now we deny you the chance to escape. Through death you will live. You will see. You will understand. The years passed with agonizing slowness. The human occupation of Krinspace was unlike anything in the history of the galaxy. The humans did not plunder. They did not enslave. They did not execute the leadership or replace the government with their own people. Instead, they helped when a cringe child was sick. Human doctors cured her. When a factory needed repairs, human engineers fixed it. When crops failed due to poor soil, Human agricultural experts taught better farming methods, the humans threw infinite resources at every problem the Kryn faced, and they kept everyone alive. This was the cruelest part. The Kryn culture was built on the concept of honorable death. Warriors were supposed to die in battle. Leaders were supposed to fall on their swords when they failed. The old and infirm were expected to end their lives rather than burden their families. Death was the answer to shame, to failure, to defeat. The humans removed that answer. Every suicide attempt was prevented. Human medical technology could revive someone who had been dead for up to 10 minutes. Human monitoring systems detected the chemical changes in a Kryn brain that preceded suicidal ideation. Human intervention teams arrived before the attempt could succeed. The Kryn warriors raged. They screamed, they fought, and the humans waited with infinite patience, treating each outburst with calm professionalism and refusing to provide the violent response the warriors craved. Vexthor watched his empire transform over the decades. The militaries were converted to universities. The weapons factories were retooled to produce medical equipment and construction tools. The orbital defense platforms were dismantled and their materials used to build space stations dedicated to scientific research. The young Kryn who grew up under human occupation knew nothing of the old ways. They learned mathematics instead of combat tactics. They studied art and music and literature. They were taught that building was more valuable than destroying, that cooperation achieved more than conquest. 50 years after Dust Haven, Vexthor sat in the same apartment where Chen had first explained his fate. He was old now by Kryn standards, though human medicine had kept him healthier than he had any right to be. His scales had faded to pale gray. His claws had dulled, but his mind remained sharp. Cursed with clarity, a knock came at his door. Vexthor opened it to find a young female standing in the corridor. She had bright green scales and curious eyes. She wore the uniform of the Kryn Medical Academy. Commander Vexthor, she asked politely. I am no longer a commander. He said, that title died long ago. I know, she said, but I wanted to meet you. My name is Cheryl. I am your granddaughter. Vexthor stared at her. He had not known he had any descendants. His son had died in the early days of the occupation, another warrior who could not accept the new reality, but apparently his son had left behind a child. Why are you here? Vexthor asked. Sherevel smiled. It was a warm expression, nothing like the cold pride Vexthor remembered from his own youth. I wanted to thank you, she said. Thank me. For what? For surviving, she said. Simply, the humans told me that you tried to die many times in the early years. They said you fought them with everything you had, but you survived long enough to see what we have become. She gestured out the window. The capital city spread below them, transformed. Where military barracks had once stood, there were now schools and hospitals. Where parade grounds had displayed the empire's might, there were now parks where children played. In the distance, the spaceport launched ships designed not for war but for exploration and trade. Look at what we built, Cheryl said, her voice filled with pride. Look at what we learned. I am a doctor. Grandfather, I save lives. My generation does not know the old ways of constant war and honor. Through death, we create instead of destroy. We heal instead of harm, and it is all because you and the others were forced to live long enough To learn a different way, Vexter felt something break inside him. It was not his spirit that had broken decades ago. It was something deeper. It was the final barrier between what he had been and what the humans had forced him to become. Do you know what I did? He asked quietly. Yes, Sherevel said. I know about Dust Haven. I know about the 50,000 humans who died. The humans made sure we learned that history. They made sure we understood the price that was paid for our transformation. She reached out and took his aged hand in hers. I am sorry for what you did, Grandfather. I'm sorry for the pain you caused, but I am grateful that you lived. Because your survival, your punishment, gave my generation the chance to be better. The humans understood something our ancestors never did. They understood that the best revenge is not death. It is life. It is forcing your enemies to live long enough to see their children choose a different path. Vexer closed his eyes. Tears leaked from beneath his eyelids, something no warrior of the old empire would have ever permitted. But he was no longer a warrior. He was just an old Kryn who had lived too long and seen too much. They denied us our final opportunity, he whispered finally, understanding the ancient message completely. They denied us the escape of death. They forced us to face what we were and become something different. Yes, Cheryl agreed, and in doing so, they saved us. Ambassador Chin visited him one last time 3 days later. She was old now too, though human medicine had kept her vital well past what should have been her natural span. She sat in the same chair she had sat in 50 years earlier. You understand now, she said. Was not a question. Yes, Vexter replied. You made us live. You made us change. You denied us the warrior's death we thought we wanted, and you forced us to build something better. Chin nodded. Slowly, 50,000 people died at Dust Haven, Commander. Nothing can bring them back but their deaths purchased something. They purchased the transformation of an entire species. Your descendants will never be what you were. They will never worship death and conquest. They will build and create and explore, and in that way the people of Dust Haven will be remembered. She stood to leave but paused at the door. Galaxy is full of warrior species. Commander species like the Kryn used to be, species that believe strength is measured by the ability to destroy. We have sent copies of your history to every major civilization in the galaxy. We have shown them what happened to you, and we have attached the ancient message that you ignored. Do not attack the humans, Vexer recited. They will deny you every final opportunity. Exactly. Chin said. Death is a final opportunity. It is an ending. It is an escape from consequences. We will not grant that escape to those who commit genocide. We will force them to live. We will force them to change. We will force them to watch as everything they believed in transforms into something better. She opened the door and stepped into the corridor. Sleep well, Commander. You have earned your rest. But know that when you finally pass from this life, naturally decades from now, you will die not as the warrior who destroyed Dust Haven, but as the example that taught the galaxy what humans truly are. The door closed. Vexter sat alone in his apartment, looking out at a world he no longer recognized, a world that was better than the one he had known, a world that existed because the humans had refused to let him and his people die. He understood now. He understood everything. The greatest punishment was not death, it was life. It was being forced to survive long enough to see your victims proven right and your beliefs proven wrong. It was living through your own transformation from monster to cautionary tale. The humans had denied the Kryn their final opportunity, and in doing so they had saved